Let's start the panel discussions for the first strategy to implement Industry 4.0 emerging technologies. So we take the privilege of calling Mr. Sunil David, Digital Tech Consultant, ex-Regional Director, IoT, AT&T, India, to please step forward for the next discussion and also be moderator for this panel. So before we start and give the mic and the stage to Sunil David, I would like to introduce Mr. Sunil David as an IoT thought leader. He is an alumnus of Symbiosis Institute of Management Studies, Pune, an industry veteran with 29 years of experience in IT and telecom industry. He is an independent digital technology consultant, advising enterprises in the areas of digital transformation with specific focus on AI and IT. And he is concerned a few AI and IoT focused startups in their go-to-market strategy and branding initiatives. Sunil, who was the regional director of IoT, as told, brings extensive experience in business strategy, sales, business development, and alliance and partnership building. He has spoken at a number of industry forums to topic related IoT, AI, digital transforming, cybersecurity, metaverse, and 5G, etc. He is an recipient of a number of awards and recognitions from various industry bodies and media conglomerates in recognition for his work in digital technology advocacy and digital skilling initiative of women. So put your hands to welcome Mr. Sunil David for the forum.
And the next speaker on the panel is Shrikanta Aradhya. Shrikanta Aradhya is currently working as General Manager and Head of Business Industry 4.0 at Bosch Software and Digital Solutions. He is an electronics engineer with the MS in Software Systems from BITS Pilani. He is responsible for P&L, business strategy, revenue growth, and delivery excellence in Industry 4.0. He has over 30 years of industry experience in the areas of manufacturing, IT, factory automation, and robotics. Shrikanta has led global teams and has international experience of working in Germany and Japan. Earlier to Robert Bosch, he has worked as principal consultant at Infosys and as DGM application and training at FANUC India. He has won the Global Business Award in Bosch for Best Deployment of Most Innovative Solution. He has also won the Bosch India Innovation Award for 2020. Put your hands together for Mr. Shrikanta.
Next in row, we take the privilege of calling upon Satish Anantaraman, sir, to please be on the panel. And to introduce Mr. Satish Anantaraman is a founder, president of ISAT. He is an MBA with strong engineering background and demonstrated ability to negotiate complex challenges in cutting-edge markets, strong technical expertise and business acumen, with a track record of leading engineering projects, supply chain management, and operations on global scale, proven ability to consistently driven results in high-pressure environments and under tight deadlines, well-versed in startup operation and management investment interaction.
The next is esteemed speaker on the panel is Mr. Ramakrishna Dasari. Mr. Dasari Ramakrishna is the founding CEO of Electronics Systems Private Limited, established in 1985. He is instrumental in Electronics growth over 37 years and also played significant role in positioning Electronics in one of India's trusted smart solutions provider. Backed by rich R&D, Electronics is now a leading provider of smart solutions for railway signaling, smart cities, and smart buildings. Mr. Ramakrishna is the architect of one of India's largest IoT network built for Indian railways with more than 10 million things connected across 9,000 locations. Under his leadership, Electronics has innovated more than 50 solutions for different domains, ranging from IoT condition monitoring systems to fail-safe control systems. Mr. Ramakrishna is involved in various social development activities for improvement of academics and industry.
So I know you're waiting for all the panel to come and then you'll start clapping. Maybe we should welcome them when they are stepping ahead and putting their foot forward for the dais. So, last but not the least, this panel has Ujjwal Ramdurg. Mr. Ujjwal Ramdurg, to please be on the dais. To introduce Ujjwal, it is digital transforming consultant and Siemens with 19 years of experience. Ujjwal is a techno-commercial consultant successful at delivering project roadmaps, leading cross-functional teams from concept to maturity, expertise in business development, digital manufacturing, digital transformation, and Industry 4.0 strategies like IoT, OT cybersecurity, and product manufacturing in development, cross-functional team leadership and deliverance, positive outcomes with strong and sustainable gains, able to identify and implement strategies to reduce cost, increase revenue, strengthen relation, improve business practices, and driven profitable growth. So put your hands together for the entire panel as we start the panel discussion right now.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I just want to start on a lighter note. Given that this session is before lunch, I'm just wondering how all of us can give you all food for thought while the thoughts might be on the food. So anyway, let me get back to the panel. At the outset, I would like to thank the organizers of Infinity Vizag 2023 IT Summit, and especially Sridhar Kosaraju, ITAP President, for inviting me to speak at this prestigious forum and moderate this panel that is going to deliberate on a very, very important topic. It is all about how do you strategize when it comes to Industry 4.0 and the role of emerging technologies as it relates to adoption of this. Right? It's a very, very vast topic, and there are a lot of dimensions as it relates to this topic. So what we want to do is over the next 60-odd minutes, we'll cover all these dimensions, and time permitting, we'll probably take some questions. Now, let me very briefly set the context. If you just look at the overall global business landscape, right, just playing out, just look at the last 2 to 3 years, ever since the pandemic has hit us, we've seen digital transformation initiatives being accelerated significantly, right? And it reminds me of what a very famous Russian philosopher Vladimir Lenin mentioned. He said this many, many years back. He said that there are decades where nothing happens, and there are weeks where decades happen, right? And I think that's kind of played out. We've seen huge amount of transformation initiatives being accelerated. You name any industry, they had no choice but to adopt digital. And this is happening globally. So the dependency on digital technologies has increased a lot. We've also started to see the whole boundaries kind of blur between physical and digital, right? So we use the word called phygital today, where you're kind of combining both, and you name any industry, whether it is retail or manufacturing or education. So you're seeing this whole merging of the physical and the digital worlds. And friends, this is happening at a very, very fast pace, right? The change velocity is really huge. And these are powered by a number of tech trends. I just wanted to call out a few of them. The first thing is that we are seeing a lot more use of software, right? So a lot more software now being fused into products. There is this cliche which says software is eating the world, right? And it's very, very true. The mobility, right? So the ability for us to use our mobile devices to be able to access any application, could be sitting on your data centers or on the cloud. So those convergence between the mobility and the cloud. And talking of cloud, I think we've seen a lot more adoption of cloud over the last few years, and this is only going to get accelerated going forward. Now, as we see a lot more enterprises move workloads to the cloud, we obviously have a lot of things connecting to the internet. IoT proliferation increased. We are going to deal with a lot more amount of data, right? So we are in a data-powered economy, and as they say, data is the new oil, but that oil obviously needs to be refined. And as you send all this data to the cloud as cyber security challenges, right? So the threat surface has increased significantly. Cyber attacks, the sophistication of attacks has increased. So we are dealing with a lot more cyber threats, and this is only going to get accelerated going forward, right? The hackers are getting smarter. And in fact, as per one report, the total amount of cyber crime that was in 2021 was 6 trillion, which is probably equivalent to the GDP of maybe India. And this can probably touch 10 trillion over the next few years, as per the study. Now, given that this topic is about Industry 4.0 strategy, and we talk about Industry 4.0, I just wanted to focus on manufacturing here. There was a study which was done by NASSCOM and Capgemini in 2021. I just want to call out a few statistics that came out of that study. As per the study, the global spend on Industry 4.0 technologies was about 102 billion in 2021, which is about 20% of the overall tech spend by the manufacturers. Okay, now this is going to increase to 40% of the overall tech spend by 2025, right? So the spend on Industry 4.0 technologies will touch 40% of overall tech spend, and that is likely to happen in the next 2 years. Now, if you look at India, and before I get to India, some of the key drivers that will accelerate the spend will be around 2 or 3 very important dimensions. The first one will be about servitization, right? So today you're seeing this whole trend of products being offered as a service, OpEx-based models. Manufacturers have already started adopting that, and we'll probably see a lot more of this going forward, where products are being offered as a service purely on an OpEx basis. The second, of course, being that integrated customer experience, because we are friends living in an economy of experiences today, right? Because all things being equal, what would differentiate one brand from the other? It is obviously going to be superior customer experience. And the third thing is that the need for businesses to respond faster with agility, right? Agility is going to be key. Just looking at India, as per the same study done by NASSCOM and Capgemini, the spend that was done in 2021 was about $5.5 to $6.5 billion. That was the overall spend on Industry 4.0 in 2021. And it is not surprising that the major industries that contributed to this was the automotive sector, the electronic sector, and the electrical sector, if you look at discrete manufacturers. And from the process side, it was mainly the chemicals and the pharma companies. But 75% of the spend was from the discrete manufacturers. Now, as per the same study, what was important to note is that there are about 35 to 40% of companies in India that are at a POC stage, whether it is an IoT POC or whether they're trying out any other POC for any digital technology. Now that is a little disheartening, because the usual mantra when you talk about implementing IoT or any digital technology is that you think of the big picture, you start small and you scale fast. And so we have a lot of these companies still at a POC stage. They are not moved to production. And the real value will come is when you move to production, and more importantly, when you move from production to scale. Because when you scale, that's when you can get the maximum business impact. So there is still work to be done. But however, having said this, I strongly believe that we are at an inflection point as far as the Indian manufacturers are concerned, because there is definitely an absolute intent, because there is that sense of realization that if they don't invest in digital technologies, and specifically Industry 4.0, that the very survival is in question. Right, so having given this context, what we wanted to do over the next 60 minutes is to cover 3 very important 2 dimensions, and we'll also touch a little bit about emerging tech. The first thing is that we wanted to touch about this whole Industry 4.0 adoption drivers and the preparedness, right? So obviously organizations need to be prepared before they embark on their Industry 4.0 journey. We want to cover about what would be the key organizational objectives, what is the current competitive landscape, what are the drivers that are forcing companies to adopt Industry 4.0, how do you get started, and how data can be used as a strategic asset. In the second round, we want to cover about the benefit and the risk assessment, right? Because there is obviously investments that are needed, so companies want quick ROI. Now, having implemented it, there are obviously going to be risks associated with that. Cyber is one challenge. There are, of course, success rates of Industry 4.0 projects. Not all projects are successful. And then finally, in the third round, time permitting, we wanted to cover what are those key emerging technologies that are going to create business impact? Because there are a plethora of technologies, right? We have IoT, we have AI, we have blockchain, AR, VR, and then 5G. 5G was launched, so 5G is going to draw a lot more use cases, especially manufacturing, right? So To discuss on these three themes, we have a very diverse panel. I couldn't have asked for a more diverse panel because we have two representatives representing Bosch and Siemens, very, very strong manufacturing background. We have Mr. Ramakrishna, who represents F-Tronics. They provide smart solutions. And then we have Satish, founder of ISAT, who also comes with a lot of good background in the manufacturing sector. And he has also got a lot of expertise in accelerated product development and advanced assembly solutions. So I think we have a great panel who's going to discuss and deliberate on this. And let me get started with the panel. Can I have a mic? Do you have a mic? Yeah, two mics, please. Can you hear? Can you all hear me? Yes? Okay, so let me start with Srikanth. So Srikanth, as it relates to this, the first theme, which is all about Industry 4.0, preparedness and the drivers. So can you share your own experiences as it relates to your customer engagements, in terms of their level of preparedness and what are their key drivers when it comes to adoption, Srikanth?
Okay. Yeah. So first of all, let me thank the organizers for this wonderful event, a very professionally organized event. So thank you very much. Coming to Industry 4.0 adoption, at least in India, it has really not taken off as it was expected maybe 3 or 4 years back. But there are quite a good drivers which actually propel any manufacturer, Indian manufacturer in particular, to go towards Industry 4.0. I could categorize these drivers on 3 fronts. The first one is the government. As you could hear from morning, there is a lot of government initiatives. I could at least state one called as PLI, which is production linked incentive, which is offered to manufacturers so that they can improve their productivity and get into new digital transformations. And also government wants compliance, so especially in terms of products going out into the market and being bad if they are recalled, then the customer or the production person has to pay for it. So for this you need a compliance environment. So you need to digitize your traceability, who has made the product, when it was made, how it was processed in the factory. All these things should be digitized so that it can be audited. So there is a lot of compliance drivers also. Then coming to the second aspect, so that was the government aspect which I covered. Second aspect is competition. I think Mr. Mohan Reddy was telling that most of the countries are now looking inward because of the supply chain issues they had with China. And most of the developed countries have brought Industry 4.0 because they want to preserve their manufacturing. That was the reason Industry 4.0 was coined by Germany, bring the manufacturing back into Germany. So each of these companies, countries and their companies would get into Industry 4.0 or have already got into Industry 4.0. They have transformed their factories to become smart and produce faster, produce at cheaper rates. So the original cost arbitrage is lost. Earlier we were thinking that because Indian labor is cheap, we get outsourced manufacturing or outsourced work. But if the same cheap products can be made by a German manufacturer, then nobody will outsource to us. So there is huge amount of competition. Indian manufacturer is not only competing with his counterparts in India, he is also competing with manufacturers in Germany, Japan or anywhere. So that means you have to pull up your socks, you have to become more efficient and more effective. And that is where your digital transformation levers will help. Then the third one is the ecosystem. We had COVID. So COVID proved that you can operate a factory remotely. You can manage factory operations remotely. I had a classical anecdote to say. 3 or 4 years back, from Bosch, we had developed an app in which a production supervisor on his mobile phones can find out which machines are working, how many parts they are producing, what is the overall equipment efficiency and such things. When we tried to sell it to many of the Indian customers, they said, why this is required? I can as well send one of my person into my factory, he will check it out and tell me. So what is the need for it? So we could not really make that sale. But come COVID, most of the customers were calling us and asking, do you have that app still available? Because then they could not operate the factory in person. People were not allowed into factories. There used to be social distance maintained. So Digital transformation has actually increased post-COVID, and this is one more factor which is driving it. So these were the three factors which I told: government, competition, and COVID. Now coming to the preparedness. The first preparedness is digital literacy, we call it. So the manufacturer should have a digital literacy. When Bosch started in its own plants for digital transformation, there was a huge digital literacy program, a skilled enabling program, because there are people around 20-25 years experience who would not have used mobile phones, who would not have used any HMIs, who would not have used any digital technology. They need to be enabled. They need to know how to operate it, how to maintain it. So there is a huge need for digital literacy which has to be done inside the factories. Then the second thing is we talk of IT, which is information technology, which is more of the office level computers, office level networking. In factories, there is also a layer called as OT. There is operational technology. That means you have huge machines being operated by computers or robots. So there needs to be a synchronization between this IT and OT. That means you need to have a cross-functional team which can manage both IT and OT. So only if you can develop that, then you can implement these Industry 4.0 programs. So I rest here.
Yeah, thanks. Great points, Srikanta. So I think you said first driver being that government and compliance. You spoke about competition, and you brought about a very important dimension. You talked about that labor arbitrage, right? That we don't enjoy that advantage anymore. I think we have to move to value arbitrage now, right? I think we have to sell value. You talked about ecosystem, very, very critical. And then when you talk about preparedness, I think digital literacy, awareness, I think a lot more needs to be done. I think there are enough work going on, but I guess efforts have to increase more. Absolutely. And then you talked about OT-IT integration, and that's always going to be a challenge, because given that we have a lot of legacy infrastructure and trying to integrate some of that, especially older manufacturers or manufacturers of very old equipment, that is always going to be a challenge, right? So a great point. So let me move to Satish. So Satish, as it relates to this theme about Industry 4.0 drivers and the level of preparedness amongst companies, and you worked in the US earlier, you've seen how companies in the US adopt it, and then you've been in India. So can you share some of your experiences as it relates to this topic?
Absolutely. So some great points added. So thank you very much for to the organizers for inviting us for this exciting panel. I wanted to focus on organizational objectives. So how does an organization decide, what they need to do when it comes to Industry 4.0? Okay. So I wanted to share, three, distinct, objectives that the organizations that I've worked with and advised had taken over the course of many years. The first one was when I was in the US. This was a joint venture between Robert Bosch and Samsung to make lithium-ion cells for electric vehicles. Okay. So if you look at this, right, very high investment. Lithium-ion cells were very nascent at the time. So most of the equipment you had on the production floor were the latest in terms of technology, right? And when you have to deliver lithium-ion cells at 6 sigma quality levels, some of the sub-processes have to be at a much higher level than 6 sigma. So budgets were open, so the organization had a lot of flexibility in deciding how to go about executing. So when you have new technology, great market growth, large investments, etc., it is relatively easy, okay, to basically choose the right technologies. Although even there, right, the quality objectives sometimes make it very hard to make this entire system work. Okay. So the next time, was when I was with Stanley Black & Decker. So Stanley Black & Decker went full force into Industry 4.0. There, Stanley was a company built out of acquisitions of hundreds of companies. So when you acquire a lot of companies, right, you want to take advantage of the economies of scale, right? But at the same time, you also want to differentiate your products. Okay, so that you have a market for each product. So the objectives at Stanley were all around basically highly flexible, high volume assembly lines. Okay, so the objective here was not necessarily 6 Sigma, 8 Sigma quality. Okay, here it was about basically looking at the demand in the market. So if there was a demand for product A, how do you quickly reconfigure the lines, right? How do you know how much inventory you have? How do you know how much work in process you have? So this was a completely different set of objectives. And when you looked at equipment, right, you had some state-of-the-art equipment and some legacy, okay? The last and the most recent I 4.0 initiative I've been involved with is as an advisor to Motherson, okay? See, the products that Motherson makes are basically, pennies or, paisa can determine essentially, whether you're profitable or at a loss. These are plastic injection molded parts. So the entire focus of Motherson when it comes to Industry 4.0 was centered around value. Okay, how do you extract value? It was never about technology. Okay, it was never about sensors. It was all about how do you extract value from whatever you do. And you were constrained, in a business like that, right? A traditional injection molding business, etc. You have a lot of legacy equipment. So dealing with legacy equipment, this is the most challenging. So depending on where you are as an organization, right? Your objectives should basically address what you need to accomplish. Okay?
Right, great point, Satish. So I think you talked about the key fact being that have right set of objectives, and I think very important dimension about extracting value, right? Because you're going to make investments, and you obviously want value from that investments, right? So, and you said another important it's less of tech, right? I think organizations are not really bothered about what technology they're going to use, but what are the business impact that it's going to create, right? So thanks for that. Let me move to Mr. Ramakrishna Garu. Sir, your organization provides smart solutions for smart cities, railway signaling, smart buildings and so on. So it wouldn't have been easy trying to sell and have them install these kind of solutions, right? So can you share some of your experiences, especially in terms of what were the drivers that caused them to adopt it, and also what was the level of preparedness, sir?
Yeah, basically when you are talking about Industry 4, first let me talk about few of the concepts of what is Industry 4 from my point of view. Basically we talk about IoT, sense, communicate, analyze, act. That is one of the definition by Gartner. Then when you are talking about today with the Industry 4 technologies, this is all systems are connected with the systems. That is no longer systems are not isolated, they are all interconnected. That means with that you will be able to build the smart solutions, because you will be able to take the decisions in a zero distance. That is where the systems are connected with the systems in a milliseconds or seconds. That's where the entire ecosystem is getting over-connected. I agree with Mr. Srikanth. Say fundamentally what we are going to look is a value. Value means, maybe sometimes people think differently, but my definition or my understanding of value is overall benefits by total cost management. If you are able to give a higher value, automatically product or solution will sell itself. That's the first fundamental. That means where is the value? That means if I have to invest or introduce the technology or solution, where is really value? Are you able to identify the value? First key challenge is where is that value? How to identify the value? When we went into the railways way back 98, when we are trying to capture the data of signaling, the biggest challenge for them is the truth of information. How the accidents is happening is not known. So when we are able to record that and replay that, then automatically they got value. That means the biggest challenge is reduced. End of the day, after 20 years, we are able to reach the Indian Railways to the zero accidents. So the data, what is captured in the railway station, is available to the The data which is captured by the railway station is reached to the divisional headquarters, and simultaneously to the board level, they will be able to understand why the accident is happening. So with that, they will be able to reduce the accidents. The next level is, there is a fundamentally the truth in the system is poor. Especially in India, the biggest corruption in my opinion is data corruption. Not the financial corruption, data corruption. That means everybody will try to change the data to please their bosses. But here the truth comes from the bottom the layer to the railway board. Thereby they understand what is exactly the challenges happening in the bottom line. They are able to now make the problem solving in a statistical manner. Thereby they will be able to make assets available the train to move. Thereby we will be able to do the punctuality. So this is where really the Industry 4 is going to act more effectively, which we have to start looking into the smart solutions. That's where my thought process is, how you identify the value, how you create the value. Third is, create means you have to understand the domain. Without understanding the domain, with only technology you can't do it. You can't push the technology without understanding the domain. The second is create it, then you have to deliver it. That means see that the customer uses it, because he doesn't know how to use it. That we have to take the responsibility of using the customer, then you have to scale up, and then you have to continuously refine it. That makes the value story continuous. That's where you have to use the technology.
Right. I think, thanks for that, sir. I think where the value is, identifying the value and creating value, I think a great point. And first time I'm hearing the word data corruption, very interesting. So I think what you clearly pointed out is we really need a single source of truth, so to speak, right?
Data integrity.
Yeah, data integrity. Yes, the great word for that. So thanks for that. Let me move to Ujjwal. And Ujjwal, you represent Siemens, what, 175 years old?
It's 175 years.
175, yes. One of the oldest in the industry, very strong in manufacturing,
yes.
Right? Using a lot of technology internally, and you're also taking solutions to your customers. So
Yes.
can you share some experiences, maybe internally as well as from your customers, in terms of roadmap, in terms of strategy, preparedness?
With respect to Industry 4.0, it's basically a concept. And Industry 4.0, when we are talking about, it all starts as Sir said, you'll have to first connect, then probably have some insights on what you have, then probably get into something where you will actually do into some advanced things and all that. So that is how we do. That is the path that even they mentioned with respect to Industry 4.0, what it is. But I would like to actually explain one thing which Srikanta said with respect to a driver named competition. That happens to be very important, because for any startup, any entrepreneur who is actually coming in, go to market becomes a very important factor. And if you really want to go to market much faster, then you need to have these technologies in hand. That is one. Second, there is a lot of policies, regulations which are in place which have to be taken care of, because as he said, there are some recall policies in automotive industries which are mandatory, and you need to have genealogy maintained for all your particular products. So that is one. Apart from this, I have also seen, on a lighter note, but whenever I meet a customer, whether it's an MSME or somebody, so what happens is one particular customer has a proper vision what he wants to do, and another one he just wants to do because somebody else has done it. That also happens. But then he knows what exactly has to be done. But this particular Industry 4.0 touches all three levers of an industry, which is people, process and technology. So we need to be upbeat with each of them, with the current market trends what are running on, and only then you will be able to actually move ahead in the organization. Now coming to preparedness of that organization, to be very frank enough, when we execute Industry 4.0, as Srikanta said, it is between IT and OT. So it is the IT layer and OT layer. We have 4 layers in an industry layer, 1, 2, 3, 4. You have in between some 3.5 as well. I'll not go into more technical aspects of it. And then you have cloud and all that. So the reluctance which comes is from the user, always. And then from the organizational point also, we need to be very clear with respect to the maturity of that industry. First of all, what is it? So are they, Industry 4.0 doesn't mean that you have to go to any IoT platform and just deploy it and then move ahead. As Sir said, value is to be seen. Probably you have production, you have maintenance, you have new product development, you have your logistics, you have utility sectors, etc., might be not everything needs to be upgraded. You need to see that value, which will bring something to the table, which will convert into money later, and only then probably get into those initiatives which will be more successful. As I was telling, I was interacting with Mr. Sunil, where I told him that in the whole scenario, only 20% of digitalization initiatives have been successful. The reason being, as sir said, value was not seen. Just do it. But then that doesn't work unless and until you really analyze yourself. You go into digital maturity assessment of your own factories or your own institutions, try to understand where the gap is, and then bridge the gap, and then come to some solutions where you will actually come out with, and you might call it Industry 4.0. That's okay, but it should bring value. So that is the crux of it. So that's what I want to say.
Right, Ujjwal. I think you touched upon one very important point: people, process, and tech.
Technology.
People, process, and technology, and you need that seamless integration. And when you talk about preparedness, you said user reluctance, which means that you need to get all functions aligned to the digital vision, right? And value, I think, you again allude to what Mr. Ramakrishna mentioned. I think organization needs to see value, right?
Correct.
Okay, great. So thank you. Let me move to the next round, and here I'm going to come to you, Ujjwal. And here we wanted to talk about the benefit and the risk assessment, that dimension where we wanted to talk about what could be the potential barriers to adoption. You just briefly touched upon reluctance of the user, but we also wanted to understand what could be additional barriers, what could be potential adjustments an organization needs to make from a leadership and culture standpoint. We also wanted to briefly touch upon some of the risks that are associated with this. So can you briefly touch upon some of these dimensions?
I probably will touch upon one of them, and then probably they also will touch upon the other aspects of it.
Yeah.
See, we always spoke that whenever it comes to Industry 4.0, it is all about data.
Yeah.
So data is the fuel that we have today, and data flows through network. We said that whatever has to flow from your L1 layer to your IoT platform or MES or clouds, whatever we say. Now here comes, when we are talking about a lot of data where you are exposing a lot of things, comes the threat of cyber security.
Yeah.
So whenever we talk about this, most of the companies are also asking, how are we going to mitigate this kind of situation or a threat that we are having? Now, the risk is whether the organization is really ready for such kind of deployments or not. Now, as Satish was saying, legacy systems, what will we do with that? And moreover, the risk that I see here, when you talk about the IT part of it, IT cyber security, you have a virus, you have a laptop, you can still replace it. But what happens when it comes to your OT cyber security? You have a machine and that gets affected, and you can't replace that particular machine at the end of the day. So you need to have that kind of readiness and a proper network, and then you need to have the robust network with proper segmentations done. I hope people are aware of this IEC 62443 standards which come down for OT cyber securities, as you have 27001 for the IT part of it. So we need to see that kind of readiness with respect to that industry. I think this is one of the threats, one of the risks that people see when I say that, okay, please go in for this Industry 4.0. They say that I am vulnerable now when I am exposing everything, but then they'll have to have their networks in place. There are some foundational things to be done, but these are something, this is one of the risks that probably people see. And I would then pass on, I think they will...
Yeah, and I think when you talk about cyber security, I think the best one can do is to minimize risk, right? Nobody can never say that they have a 100% secure environment.
They will not.
Right?
See, when it comes to the production environment, we don't prevent anything. We don't stop anything. We only precaution, we only notify.
Yeah.
It cannot happen that I can stop a particular assembly line because there is some kind of a threat which is coming in. No, I can't do that. Because in an automotive sector, probably with a takt time of 68 seconds or 70 seconds for a particular vehicle to move in, I can't stop that particular line because something has happened. But yes, you can come in with technologies like industrial anomaly detections, where you can have some threat signatures being identified, you can be notified and all those, and then have that particular system or a network in place. Even for legacy systems, get into the network consulting, get into proper segmentations and have things in place so that this can be mitigated.
All right, thanks Ujjwal. Let me get Mr. Ramakrishna on. So in your mind, what could be barriers, what could be adoption risks? Can you share?
Yeah, basically when you are talking about today IT, OT and all these dimensions, I didn't really agree in that dimension. What is that needed is you need to have finer data. That is a very close sampling. When you are talking about a close sampling, you can't make it with a regular IT standard platforms or standard devices. That's what trying to make it everybody with again standard what is called object-oriented languages with bulky these things. We need to have a simplified sampling should be done with the bare metal CPUs and then communicate with the lighter protocols and aggregate it to some PC or somewhere, and then you have to take the data to some other place. If that is not going to done, there are two major challenges. One is, as you are talking about, cyber threat is going to be there, and another is there will be a lot of heavy computing without getting a much of a value. You are going to create that higher price for that, and any of this is failed. Again, the cost of repair is very, very high compared to when you go to the bare metal. Bare metal cost today for a couple of dollars, maximum $10, $15, you can make at least 10 to 15 points, you can read it if it is a NLOG. If it is something digital, you can read it at a very little cost, you can read it a finer data. That's what people are now talking, AI ready hardware. So when you want to make it AI ready, you need to have more granular data. So for that, I am not going to see any threat on the cyber security thing. We deployed already lot of IoT device in 9,000 locations across the country, and we don't have any cyber threat up till now. This is from 20 years of the activity. So we didn't find anything. If the cyber threat comes, if somebody is going to hack server or something, only they are able to stop the server functioning, not that they can't steal the data of what is railways and do some harm. Because why somebody will steal the data? If he is going to get some value. Suppose if I am hacking some banker, this thing, I can make some money. By getting a railway data of signaling, what somebody will do with that? He has to spend a lot of money to do that. So there is no cyber security issue in that. That's where unfortunately on especially IoT dimension, lot of hype is created on the threat is created on the name of cyber security, which I feel we have to get rid of that. If you put a different protocols with a minimum protocol, suppose if you want to do something, a cyber attack, you have to send the program to run into my hardware. If I have a bare metal which doesn't allow even the data to come in, if you send some wrong data also, it will eject it. So then nothing can happen in that. Only somebody can steal. If you want to steal also, he need to understand, enter into the layers and all that. This is separate layers, separate connectivity. So we have to look from that angle, which we will be able to get more value at lower cost and without much worry, because the entire IoT what we are going to build should last for 15 years. Not for every year or every couple of years I will change. And again, whatever the solution you build, if you are going to continue with now every hardware will change in 3 years. Suppose if I have to maintain my hardware for 10-15 years, where is my next level? And again, version change is going to be biggest challenge for the IoT. Again, you are changing versions, again I have to change the software. So who is going to give me maintenance time for that? So that is not practical basically, because last year itself 28 billion ARM processors were sold across the world. That means more than 4 times of the people across the world is already deployed. That means maybe actual deployment maybe 10 times of the people in the world. This is what is happening much rapidly. Majority of them going on bare metal, not on the whatever the edge processors or Raspberry Pi or this thing. But we have to develop capabilities to work on bare metal. That is which is missing not only in India, across the world.
Okay, thanks. Very interesting perspective. So, Satish, you want to cover maybe some of the potential leadership culture barriers that might probably be impediments?
Yeah, absolutely. So, some great points added on the technology side, but, at the end of the day, it's people who make this happen, And in my experience, right, at the leadership level, okay, so a lot of these initiatives are what I call top-down driven approaches, okay. the management has to basically push these through. It can't be a bottom-up process. And when faced with meeting short-term objectives, a couple of companies I mentioned, Stanley and Motherson, have quarterly earnings, that they need to report. So when faced with the short-term objectives that need to be met and the long-term gains these bring, right? What I see is if the results are not seen very soon, I see the management kind of giving up quickly. So, and when that support even starts, when you even start to see that support sagging, it goes downhill very fast. Okay, so even the little gains that could have possibly been accomplished, don't happen. Okay, and one more thing in this, right? There's a lot of technology involved, but you can't be blinded by technology. I'm bringing this up collectively. We are bringing this up for the nth time. It's all about value. Okay, and value should be at the center of any strategy you employ.
Sure, thanks. So, Srikanta, anything that you would wish to add?
Yeah, I would like to add few things, especially since Ramakrishna Dasari talked about cyber security. Actually, cyber security, even though you feel it is hyped, it is not hyped. People would have seen Family Man first part. So that's the cyber security threat what we are seeing when machines get connected. It is not about you losing money or you losing some data. It is where people will lose their life. It could be Bhopal gas disaster kind of things which will happen when factories get connected. So the risk proposition is very high. This is one point which I would like to bring. Second is, we feel that threats are not there, but I have met few customers in the last 6 months, big companies, big enterprises who have more than 100 subsidiaries. They have got cyber security things. That means there is something called ransomware, where your entire network, your entire systems will be attacked and you will not be able to operate it unless you pay a huge $1 million amount to the hackers. And they do it in a very organized way. So you can say that my data is not important, my machines are not important to the world, but they are not hacking you for that. They are hacking you for money and they will make you pay it in a different way. So ransomware is very severe. In India itself, we have met many companies which have gone through ransomware. It doesn't come in public knowledge, but it's very, very much there. So the risk proposition is very high. You need to take precautions. So that's definitely a barrier to adoption. And I think there are a lot of cybersecurity experts here who can talk about how these things can be mitigated. That's about the cybersecurity and the risk barrier. Coming to the one more thing which I wanted to talk about is the ROI. Because most of the Industry 4.0 implementations don't happen, especially in Indian environment, because we Indians have the basic mentality of paisa kedara hai. Especially when Maruti had, if you see 20 years back, what does it give as a mileage? So that's what people normally talk of. So every project, we should have a return of investment. So normally when we get into customer discussions, we try to see that how a return on whatever investment he is going to make is coming in 1.5 years or 2 years time frame, so that he is assured of something coming back. So that's one very important thing, and this also mitigates the barrier of adoption. Then the second thing is this POC conundrum. Indians always want to, even when you go to a sweet stop, you will say that, can you give me a sample of that Mysore Pak? I will try it out and then buy it. Similar thing they do in factories also. When we go and meet customers, they will say, can you do a POC, proof of concept, they call it.
And the one free POCs also.
Yeah, absolutely. Free POC. Or proof of capability, they will say. They will not even say concept, capability. That means you don't have a capability, prove it to me, then I will buy it. Actually, we seem to be very late. Already it's 10 years since Industry 4.0 has been introduced in the world. There are a lot of German companies, US companies who have done whole hog. So there is nothing like proving any concept left out. What all you have to prove is already proved by others. So start using it. But as Ujjwal was telling, there should be clarity of vision. That means why I am going to implement it. Is it for improving my productivity or for improving quality? What I am going to do in first year, what I am going to do in second year. So there should be a clear-cut roadmap, clear-cut executive commitment and a vision. and a business case out of all these things. So I invest this much, what I get out of it. With that, I think most of the adoptions will happen.
Right, Shrikanta. So ROI obviously very critical. Indian companies obviously want ROI much faster, but they have to also realize this is always going to be a journey, and they obviously have to be patient and persevere. And you talked about POC, so I think what is important is for them to look at it not as a proof of concept, but perhaps as proof of value, right? That is so important, right? So thanks for sharing your thoughts. We'll do a very quick last round, and I request all of you all to maybe limit your responses to maybe 2 minutes each, because this is a very vast area. When you talk about emerging technologies that constitute, Industry 4.0, IoT, AI, blockchain, and so on. But let me start with Shrikanta. So Shrikanta, in your view, just looking at the next 2 to 3 year horizon, what do you think could be those key technologies that will probably see us going mainstream from an Indian standpoint? Can you call out 2 or 3 of them?
Okay, I would call out 2, because Industry 4.0 has got 9 technologies, right. Blockchain, advanced robotics, AR, VR. So I will call out 2, which I feel will make a difference. The first one is metaverse, not in the metaverse side of thing, but maybe AR, VR, extended reality kind of thing. We have tried it out maybe 2 or 3 years back with one of our German customer, who was a machine manufacturer. He used to sell machines in the entire world, and he had a problem that whenever he makes a new product or a new machine ready and he has to sell it to an Indian customer, then his Indian sales team should be transported to Germany. Here they have to be trained on the machine, and even the Indian customer also wants to have a look and feel, so maybe one machine should be sent to India. So there was a lot of cost involved and there was a lot of time. Whereas we solved it with a virtual reality solution where the machine could be put on a metaverse space, and anywhere in India people can log into it, have a complete look and feel of the machine. You need not go to Germany to do that. You can sit in India, log in and see the machine itself and feel the look and feel in a virtual reality concept. So this is one thing which is catching up, not only for marketing, sales, even design. It can be done in a collaborative way and a metaverse. This is one thing which is definitely going to pick up. Second thing is AI. Definitely artificial intelligence is going to help. We had deployed Energy's platform to many of the Bosch plants in India, even to our customers. We have standard AI models available for different utilities like chillers, compressors and all. We can see savings there. Your bill for one of our customers, energy bill was reduced by more than $1 million each year. So this is a tangible saving you have. So AI can really do that.
Right, I think good point on you talking about energy optimization, because ESG being the mantra, most organizations have that on top of the agenda, and if you're able to use AI for that, that's great. How about you, Satish, anything that you want to call out? Any couple of technologies that you see probably getting a lot more adoption going forward?
Yeah, so I think the most gratifying trend that I am seeing is, so we have lagged in development of ground up technologies, especially on the hardware side. So today, I see a lot of companies developing robotics solutions, autonomous guided vehicles, not just for us, but for the world. At the end of the day, for us, to be part of this journey, right, we have to have an integral role, right, not just a peripheral role. So what I see is, in addition to AR, VR, where we are doing a lot, even on the hardware side with robotics, AGVs, etc., I think we are poised to now, take some leadership, because we are now focusing on ground up. In the past, it used to be just white label, okay, the hardware, but this ground up development is very gratifying.
Right, and with the chips getting faster and denser, and with miniaturization of technology, perhaps cost of hardware will also come down. Mr. Ramakrishna, anything that you want to call out in terms of emerging tech?
Basically, I believe IoT will work more because sense and take more and more data and analyze first analytics in a descriptive and then maybe diagnostic. First, the two has to be along with IoT to act and communicate. The next is maybe algorithms is the most important, because for anything to control robotics or any of the things, end of the day you need to have a better algorithms.
Yeah.
Building algorithms will create any of the things, whether whatever you are talking. So algorithms is going to be the key for success, in my opinion.
Right, so we can probably coin a new thing, AIoT, algorithms in conjunction with IoT, right? In fact, they already started using that, AI and IoT together, right? Ujjwal, anything that you want to call out?
Yeah, so almost all AI, ML and IoT is being told. Of course, those are the emerging technologies, but then what I feel is definitely in the next 5 years, we'll have not predictive but prescriptive analytics. Prescriptive analytics coupled with your existing SCADA systems probably, which will directly control what prescriptions have to be given to the machines. You really need not predict. You know what you have predicted. Then if you know what you have predicted, why don't you prescribe what has to be done? So, prescriptive analytics might be one. And the second thing what I feel is people who are coming into the greenfield projects now. You see these electric vehicles, you see gigafactories coming up, you have many aerospace component manufacturing coming up, or now semiconductors. I think dark factories would be seen in the next future, in the next 5 years. We are talking about smart factories, I am talking about dark factories. Dark factories is a different concept altogether. So I think these two would definitely be with what the panel has already said.
Okay, thanks Ujjwal. So can we take time for one question? We can? Okay. So anyone who wishes to ask the panelists a question, can you please raise your hand? We have a gentleman there. I request you to please mention your name, which organization you represent, and also mention to whom you are directing the question to. And my request to you also is to keep the question very brief so that we can probably take time for one more question. So there's a gentleman there. Can we get a mic for him, please?
Come friend.
Yes, yeah. Yes, please.
Still come friend, we'll be able to come.
Should I use this one?
You can take this. Sorry. Collaboration.
Hello. Yeah. Understand? That is fine?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead. Can you introduce yourself before you ask the question? Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks. First of all, thanks. We're very good to have you here. I'm Naveen. I'm a manager in Mauritech. My question is around one of the emerging technology I think we left out during the discussion, that is blockchain. Just want to understand what are the messages that you're going to give to entrepreneurs who want to build applications on blockchain. And the second question, I don't know whether it's the right question to you, but what is the framework that government is building, especially on the regulatory side? And we quite often we are seeing from the government that cryptocurrencies are being banned. We need to ban the cryptocurrencies, right? So the messages from finance ministers and the regulators, hearing the messages to ban the word, how we encourage the entrepreneurs to build technology on blockchains.
Right, so what we'll do is we'll take the first question on blockchain because the second question may not be relevant to the discussion. Yeah. So let's, anyone wants to take this on blockchain?
I can take it. Yeah. Maybe I will go first. Blockchain is an interesting technology as long as the use case is very clear and very evident. I can tell from our own experience, we started blockchain journey around 3 years back. We made blockchain solutions for a lot of industries. Nothing succeeded. But recently we have a success because this was a use case from a customer who is actually getting a lot of meat for his employees. It's a defense thing. And since this meat has to be validated, that means whether the meat has come from a proper source, it is not contaminated. He wanted a very trustworthy solution established. And the only thing which we think of was blockchain. And this is a very good use case. and it's gone very successfully. So the use case is very important for blockchain. It can really scale.
My only suggestion who wants to get into, somebody comes to me and says, okay, let us build it in blockchain is, I think you know these 5 whys. So you ask yourself, why do you want to do it in blockchain 5 times, and then get into that. If really that works, if really it is needed, or else I really, as he said, a proper use case with a proper validation, only then blockchain would be required. And just to say on the governmental part, there are some IT laws and regulations which have been done with respect to the data tampering and all that. So I do not know exactly what are those, but yes, there are some clauses which are there, which we experienced in one of our projects right now, which we are executing in a steel company itself. So there are clauses, but yes, those can be mitigated through blockchain. Of course, we are doing it a different way, but those kind of things can be mitigated through a blockchain. But blockchain is not always the solution unless and until the use case is proper.
One more question. Can you get a mic for him, please? This will be the last question. Okay, audible. Yeah,
yes.
I can hear you. Yeah.
Okay. Thank you. I'm Vijay from Algos, Hyderabad. Just made a lighter note on dark factory.
See, talk about a smart factory. Now you have a lot of AI, ML, and lot enabled things, right? Dark, where dark. So dark factories are nothing but your production is automated right from your raw material till it actually moves out. So like a semiconductor factory, if you see, or a gigafactory where you make your cells, lithium ion cells, you feed the raw material at the start, goods at the end. So FG is outside. Only the quality and maintenance departments exist in such kind of things, but most of them are all automated. So that's a dark factory. That is absolutely automated. It's done.
Yeah, I have a easier explanation for it. Dark factories are lights out factory. That means when you are running a factory, you normally keep lights on because people have to move around, operate the machines.
Correct.
Dark factory or lights out factory. Japan has done it 15-20 years back, where 72 hours of unmanned operation, 720 hours of unmanned operation was possible. But now with Industry 4.0 solutions, everything can be managed remotely, so you don't need lights on inside the factory and you can run it uninterrupted, like he told, completely in automated way.
Yeah, that's a nice thing. So lights off.
And just one point, right? So dark factory doesn't have to be for semiconductors. For example, right?
That's an example.
Motherson is building a dark factory for molding plastic parts. Okay, so perpetually dark, right? Essentially everything is automated.
Correct.
Okay, so if you want to learn more about it, you just get in touch with me. Maybe you can even visit and learn.
Okay, I think we've completely run out of time. Thank you so much, gentlemen, for your thoughts. It was a very good discussion. So, a lot of good takeaways. I think one key takeaway, obviously, is that the importance of value from an Industry 4.0 project. Leadership, organizations want to see what value. Obviously, you need return on investment. That is very, very important. Data integrity, how do you leverage data as a strategic asset? Cybersecurity is still a challenge. How do you address? So it is a journey. This will continue, and my strong belief is that as a country, I think we are definitely at an inflection point. Organizations have realized the importance of this, and with all the key drivers there, with government creating a very conducive environment in terms of policies. We have the startups who bring in a lot of innovation. We have great solution providers, including system integrators, and we have industries on experiment and risk. So I think the whole ecosystem is all built, and we are hoping that next time when we have probably the 35 to 40% of people who are in POCs will probably have already moved to that, and maybe we start seeing projects scale up even more. On that note, I would like to end.
Thank you so much, Sunil. It was amazing. Thank you all the panel. And this is a time that we have to recognize their patience in telling about the data and technologies and putting all those knowledge and sharing every experience with us. So Let's put our hands together and encourage them and appreciate their time and patience to do that. Thank you, Sunil. Srikant, thank you. Thank you, Ujjwal. So rest of all of us can actually break for lunch.